Hello, everybody. So, I have some good news. My knee finally got over whatever hiccup it was having. Thought there for a minute that it was gonna keep going. I would have to make arrangements to go down to my doctor's because there was literally no way I was gonna be able to walk that far. Um, but anyway, anywho, so I am pretty much back to normal. Kinda hesitant. I haven't been out walking in like a really long time due to one thing or the other, so I've been just kind of probably not taking very good care of myself that way. I need to ease back into that. Um, but yeah, I'll let you guys know what happens with that, of course. And also, there will be a gameplay video coming probably tomorrow. I plan on recording it at some point today. We're going to go back to Chef RPG. And like I said last time, things should be a little bit more active in the game, not just let's go to the greenhouse, let's do that, or as I like to call it, chore time, where you just do the things that you do every day. And the only real decision you have is should I, take a quest from the board or should I open up my restaurant? And so hopefully things will start to be a bit more active from here on out, at least for a little while. Um, but yeah, I did want to talk to you guys because I cannot stay away from Scarlet Hollow, and I believe I mentioned this a few videos back, but they have updated their game because they're getting ready to come out with episode 5, which should be really interesting. I'm very, very curious to see what happens. But I started a new playthrough and picked Mystical and Talk to Animals because those are two very fun traits to have together. And I discovered a few things and I have some questions. So, first off, I don't know if you guys remember, but in episode 2, when we see Rosalina sneaking into one of the abandoned mines and we go in after them and find the teenagers hanging out. One of those teenagers is a young man who reminds me a bit of Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. From the Scooby-Doo series. In fact, he's tall, lean, very lanky, he even kind of has the same hair, the same color of hair, but, it's under a beanie that has a certain, plant on it, which I'm not going to mention, but, certain plant that people do tend to, enjoy, shall we say. And, well, like, I've talked to you guys before about the fact that I think Sybil is keeping the people in town calm and, for the most part, unaware of what's going on as far as supernatural activities and stuff. Um, I have to be honest, I don't know where on the spectrum Sybil lies. Like, she kind of to use D&D as an example, like, she's not on the evil spectrum, and she's not necessarily on the good spectrum, but I think she's more, like, neutral, if that makes sense. You know, there's good neutral, evil neutral, or neutral neutral, chaotic neutral, and evil neutral, or something like that. Anyway, any hoodles, I'm not sure, but, well, this is long story, so buckle in. And also spoilers for Scarlet Hollow. If you haven't played it yet, go play it. Go play at least the demo because it's free on Steam. It's excellent. It is a very good game, very good story. It's keeping me hooked. And so, yeah. So that's my thought process anyway. But, do y'all remember me mentioning, and this is a bit of a diversion, but it'll cook back up, I promise. Do y'all remember the stone, I'm going to call them seals, because I've heard them called seals. I don't know if they're seals, but again, I think that's their purpose. I think they're sealing something. And here's the thing. When I first started playing this game, I thought that these seals were seals to keep something buried, because they're always in the earth. They're always kind of like hidden away, and they kind of all have different images that kind of relate to something being chained or something being held back or enslaved or whatever. And so I always thought for the longest time that there were like two entities in the game. That there was the entity that is currently possessing the body of Sam Wayne, or that there is this bigger, maybe Old One-esque entity that is being sealed, buried away, kept away from everything. I think a lot of that has to do with, you see that a lot in media. Like, there's something that is buried away. I mean, we can't dig anything like that up, or dire consequences will fall, or whatever. So, for the longest time I thought that, well, I was replaying, and what's fun is they added a few mystical lines. In fact, they added some mystical lines to the, because you know how when you're in the ghost hunt at the end of episode 3, and the ghost is taking you through his memories, and you were given lines, basically, and you stick to the script, and you can get an achievement for that too, as well. And but there's also other mystical traits, especially if you invite Tabitha to come along with you. Because if you invite Tabitha, neither one of you are given, well, like, Tabitha isn't given a part to play at all, which I find really interesting, considering the ghost beef with the Scarlets and the fact that he gives you, as the newest Scarlet, the incoming Scarlet, the one who doesn't know all this stuff, all this history, and you're learning as you go, and the ghost is like, here, you play this role, you play my role, and stuff. And, like, I find that really interesting. Like, the ghost is more the puppeteer than the one controlling everything and making everybody say their parts, which makes me think that this ghost person was basically, I mean, and this is back in the day, so there probably wasn't theater kids in the same way. Like, I grew up wanting to be part of drama. I grew up being part of choir and taking part in musicals and being so excited when I got a solo or whatever, or a more outstanding part or whatever. But, like, I do find it funny that neither me, I'm just gonna call it me, or Tabitha get possessed. You know, we're clear headed, we're able to approach this. I almost wonder if the ghost did that on purpose. Like, he knew, number one, that our character didn't know very much about it, and was like, okay, here's what happened from what I remember. And Tabitha, of course, although the more I think about it, the more I think Tabitha wasn't told the whole story either. Like, she was probably told one side of the story from her mom, you know? But, like, considering the fact that it takes her to about the middle of the ghost haunting for her to even possibly admit that her family might be responsible for what happened and all that. I mean, and that makes sense, you know. You're not gonna, if you are part of this massively powerful family and you've got kids, you're not gonna, you know, we should, but not everybody is going to be like, okay, kids, here's the unbiased story. No, you're gonna be biased a bit towards your side. But that also makes me wonder, you know, like, how far back does that go? Does anybody in the Scarlet clan know the true story other than the people who are responsible for it? But yeah, so anyway, to get back to what I was saying, like for the longest time I thought that the seals were sealing something away. I thought that there were two entities, you know. And so, but there's basically new conversations and new questions you can ask that make me think that it's not so much a sealing something away, it's sealing the town to keep others away. And it kind of reminds me of, I don't know how many of you guys are older like me, But like I remember playing this game back in like the 90s, early 2000s called Barrow Hill, made by a gentleman named Jonathan Boakes, and he's kind of known for making haunted point and click adventure games, kind of like some of them are really really good and I highly recommend. I think it's called Dark Falls Studios or something like that. But anyway, look up Dark Falls Studios or look up Dark Fall and you should find them. But there's this game that he worked on with friends of his, um, where you are up in Cornwall and you're driving along. Starts out you're just driving along like normal, probably just passing through, and then you hit a certain spot and your car stops and you have car trouble, it won't turn over, you can't drive, anything like that. So you get out of your car and like most of us would be like, oh well, there's probably a gas station not too terribly far away. So you go start walking back the way you came. There's a barrier. And turns out that there's a barrier around this whole area that somebody did. I can't really remember exactly in Barrow Hill who's responsible for the barrier, but it's basically a protective barrier. It keeps the enemy of the game, the spirit who awakens every so often, you know, like it's basically your responsibility as the newcomer to set things right. And then and then at the end of the game, spoiler, the barrier drops and you're free to leave. But what I find really fascinating is it's kind of the same thing in Scarlet Hollow, I think. At least this is my current theory. It could change depending on what episode 5 brings us. But like I said, with the new conversation topics and stuff that happens, my theory is that to use another example, I don't know how many of you guys watched Once Upon a Time when that was going, but you know how there was a barrier preventing people from leaving the town. Same thing. And I don't know if it's like an actual physical barrier, because you do talk to people like Kanika, who successfully left and was doing fine, going to school and all that, then had to come back to town when her dad died and ended up being stuck there and stuff. And so it's kind of one of those, it always draws you back. And like, I think the game developers probably did that to, like, wherever you grow up, there's always kind of a bit of a tether, if that makes sense, or it's a bit of a connection. Like, even though I'm over here in England, there will still always be a connection between Iowa and myself. That's why whenever I see something in the news that says Iowa is going through this, I'm always like, check it out, because that's my first home. That's where I was born. That's where I lived a lot of my life. And so, I don't know, I just find it really interesting that it's like, um, yeah, you know. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling a bit, and I apologize. I don't know if this is coming across clear at all, but again, I highly recommend playing this game if you can, at least playing the demo, which again, I emphasize is free on Steam. And Tony and Abby, the creators of the game, have done a fantastic job. And they are still working on it. Like, they are still working, I'm assuming, very hard on episode 5 because it's supposed to come out next February, which is just in about 4 months or 3.5 months. And I'm like really shocked about that. This year has gone by, it's just way too quick. But anyway, so, but yeah, like I find it funny. I'm trying to remember now where I heard this from, but I think a lot of it comes from talking to Oscar because he's the librarian and he's, the one who gives you access to like sources and stuff. Like, he's like, yeah, read this book or whatever. Matter of fact, second day you start out at the library, you can start out at the library with Stella and Kanika, and you do research and stuff. And, like, it was really funny because I didn't have Booksmart, and you need to have Booksmart in order to, either to prevent either Tabitha or yourself from giving up years of your life to the ghost. Because that's the deal. He's like, yeah, I will leave, I will rest, I will go away if one of you gives me years of your life. And another thing, again, major diversion, but the other thing that I found really interesting, and I think the developers of the game made this more obvious because I noticed it a lot sooner. So, when you and Tabitha are going through the haunting, going through the different scenes, and there's a point where Tabitha steps off to the side, makes a phone call to somebody. She doesn't tell you who, but it ends up being Sybil. So she knows to call Sybil in case crap goes down. And so Sybil shows up at the very end, snaps everybody out of their trance or whatever, gets everybody else out of there, but leaves you and Tabitha in the basement under, I don't even know what you would call it, storeroom maybe? I don't know what it would have been used for back in the day, but anyway. So, basically to explain, so Sybil makes it very, very clear, while being extremely obtuse, that she thinks that Tabitha should be the one to sacrifice years of her life. And, like, while I was watching that, I was like, why? Why are you so insistent on having Tabitha be the one? especially considering that up until we arrived in town, Tabitha was the last Scarlet. And if she gives up unknown years of her life, she could die, and then the town would be free, I'm assuming, from the Scarlet influence. But at the same time, as other characters in the game, and as we ourselves point out to Tabitha, or confirm with Tabitha, that that, the minds that she's in charge of, that I find it funny, she doesn't even really want to be in charge of them. And if you spend time with her, again, spoilers, if you spend time with her alone, if you wait for her, at the beginning of the third day, the two of you go off and have conversations and get to know each other better and stuff. And I do want to run through that again, but I find it really interesting that Tabitha is Tabitha wants to live a normal life, She doesn't want to be in charge. She doesn't want to be responsible, and she's been told her entire life that the Scarlets are what's holding the town together. And so and so the fact that Sybil is trying to break that connection, like I said, I don't think she's evil. At least not full out, flat, cackling, twirly mustache evil. But I think she's very, very much, I don't know, I don't even want to say she's selfish. I think she's got a big plan that she's been working on for maybe decades, depending on if you believe that she's always been the witch and she kind of reanimates and keeps going and all that and becomes a different person, she takes on a different personality, and right now she's Kanika's mom. And I don't know. But like I said, I just find it really kind of interesting that she is oh, well, that she basically is trying to get, especially since, there's other times where she helps Tabitha, especially with the tea and the goat that's in the greenhouse later on, and the fact that she helps Wayne, or whatever is possessing him, whatever is using him. So like I said, I don't think she's out and out evil, but I think she's got this big plan that she's been working on and is working on, and I think that she is basically no, my plan is going to succeed. I just find it really, really interesting. Because, like I said, the ghost in episode 3 gives everybody who comes with you to ghost hunt the ghost gives everybody a role. He gives Kanika, who is Sybil's daughter, as far as we know, she gives Sybil's daughter, who is a witch, the role of the witch. And, like I've heard some people say, oh, that must mean the role gets passed down. And maybe that's why Kanika can't leave town. It's because she's meant to take on the role of Sybil. And that's those people. There are two different camps, basically, of Sybil. That they think Sybil is the witch. She's always been the witch. She's always... And the clue... It was supposed to be a clue that Kanika, who is Sybil's daughter, was picked as to play the witch, basically, by the ghost. He's like tapping us on the shoulder and going, pay attention to this. This is important. But then there's another part. There's another group of people, and I'm kind of in that group. Like, I'm not entirely sure what I believe yet. But I do think, as of right now, I'm willing to change my mind later if given further evidence and all that, but my current belief is that the role of the witch passes down, and it probably passes down through Sybil's family. Like, Sybil's mom was a witch, Sybil's grandmother was a witch. It's like the role of witch. It's like being witchy, being like the town healer or whatever, is a role that gets passed down through generations. But then I do wonder, because Sybil, actively tries her best to keep Kanika from, hanging out with us, going to explore supernatural things, that kind of stuff. She chastises her daughter. And she basically, according to what we learned from Kanika, what we learned from some other people, is that Sybil basically tries to keep Kanika close, physically and probably emotionally too, as far as she chastises her when the ghost hunt is done and we freed the ghost from being stuck on the mortal plane and stuff. Which also makes me think, if we can release a ghost and he's not stuck, he or she is not stuck in town, can we free people? Can we free the thing? But anyway, so I think Sybil's deal is she wants the seals broken because she encourages us to find the seals. She's the one who tells us, go to the clinic, do whatever you have to find that seal. And it's so, and that makes me think that, number one, that she or her ancestors maybe are not the ones who set the seals in place, which means they either was far enough back so that, and maybe records didn't get passed down, maybe, you know, maybe whoever it was died before they could be like, here are the seals, here's where they, like, I still not 100% sure if whoever the witch was is the one who put the seals in, or if maybe the townspeople from decades ago did it, and maybe the witch helped with that. But there is apparently, although we don't know what yet, but there is apparently a reason why that's part of Sybil's plan. She wants the seals broken or at least revealed. And like I said, I found it really sus that she wanted Tabitha, who, as far as, most people in town were aware of until we showed up, was the last Scarlet. That she wants and encourages Tabitha to give up unknown years of her life, which means she could fall over. If she does do that, she could fall over dead tomorrow. And then what would happen? It's like, yeah, it's like on the one hand, it might be okay, but on the other hand, it's like, if we talk to Tabitha enough, she will admit that the mines aren't going to be active forever. That they're going to run out of things to mine in the mine. And that eventually there will come a day where the resources dry up. And, like, I just find that really interesting. Because Tabitha knows. Tabitha, I believe, knows she's on limited time. But she is still trying her best because she's been told all her life that the mines are integral and that we need to keep the mines going as long as possible. So yeah, so I found that really interesting. I'm like, why are you trying, because the funny thing about Sybil is when you first meet her, she seems like, unless you have mystical, she basically appears just like your regular little lady, and she's, interesting to you. And, like, even her own daughter's like, I thought she was more new age than actually had power and stuff. And, like, I just find that really interesting. And also, that kind of means that Sybil knows how to act. Like, she knows how to, like, that she acts so hard to play this role. And, like, that's the only reason why I'm not entirely sure that the role of town witch is passed through generations, because it seems like Sybil does not want her daughter to follow that path. But on the other hand, she also is keeping I'm assuming trying to keep her daughter close at home. She's got a role for her. Her Kanika's role, according to Sybil, is, as far as I can tell, to take care of the general store, to take care of her brother, and to stay out of anything supernatural related. And I'm just kind of that's interesting. So that kind of makes it seem more as though Sybil, the people who say Sybil is the witch and has always been the witch, and she's just reincarnating over the years, kind of makes that theory a bit more sustainable, I guess. But yeah, so, and then the other thing, I brought up with Singh, the young man who we get to meet at all the way back in episode 2, we keep running into him. We keep bumping into him. I got into the beginning of episode 4, and I've talked to animals, and we find out, spoiler alert, that the pastor has the same gifts. He has talked to animals. And, I find that really fascinating, and we get to talk to him about different things, and it's kind of interesting seeing the pastor's perspective, because he believes in God, he runs the church and all that, but then he, tells us that his daughter, he has one child who is a daughter, and that child, he thinks, has inherited the gift of talking to animals. And all that. And, that's fascinating. That is clearly, as far as I'm aware, that is clearly a quest that is going to come later on. Maybe in episode 5, I don't know, maybe in a further episode. We'll get to go to the church and talk to maybe the pastor's daughter, or maybe go into the church and get to talk to, because he says that his daughter is talking to the rats who live in the church walls. And it's number one, I'm why are there rats in the church walls? And my second question is, are you sure they're rats? Because they might be cryptids of some sort, considering this whole game takes place in Appalachia, and Appalachia is very well known for being haunted, and that have a bunch of cryptids running around it. So, anyway, but yeah, so, well, and to bring it back to Sybil for a moment, because we know Sybil makes and sells her tea. You can get her tea at the diner. You obviously has tea at the general store, and she probably, it's kind of almost known at this point that Sybil is using tea to keep the townspeople kind of as much as possible unaware of supernatural happenings. Because, it's funny, because all the way back in episode 1, if you go with Stella into the woods, you'll encounter the ditchlings, and And the ditch lanes will be, well, unless you have a certain trait, powerful build, by the way, very effective. But unless you have powerful build, like I always save Gretchen. Like there's been a few times where I've saved Duke, but I always feel horrible because Stella's the only one that's left of her family, except for Gretchen. And if Gretchen gets taken away and killed and have whatever it is implanted in her by the ditchlings, yeah, Stella's not the same Stella she normally is. And so, which is understandable, absolutely. But, like, I don't know, I just always find it kind of weird. But yeah, basically you need powerful build, and you can save both Duke and Gretchen. But if you choose to not save Duke, if you choose to save Gretchen, which I always usually do, because even if I don't have talked animals, I'm like, Gretchen's a lovely dog, and she doesn't need to be killed and implanted and all that crap. And so, but I like Duke too, and so it's meant to be kind of a trolley situation, almost like. It's kind of like, which will you let die, which life is more important, and so I find it really interesting. But anyway, so to get back on track, oh, I know where I was going with this. So, if Duke dies, and you make it, out in the woods, Stella will call the police and let them know. Well, the police not only won't go out into the woods in the middle of the night to try and get Duke's body, but they will also, if you talk to them, like you'll run into Bo at the beginning of episode 3 when you go to the general store, and Bo will be like, they apparently can't find him. And and they, like one of the police officers, after Stella shows them the footage, one of the police officers is like, oh, it's a naked maniac. It's like, no, that doesn't look like any naked person that I've ever seen before. And granted, I haven't seen very many naked people in my life, but at the same time, I'm just like, no, that's nobody that's naked or whatever. But yeah, so I'm just kind of like, but like, that just kind of, it's like small town cops, but crank it up to 10, And it's like, why did they, you would think they would care about their citizens, their fellow people being, and like, but they but they don't. And it's almost like they completely forget about it. So, my current theory is that Sybil is using the tea to make people forget about, or to keep people from discovering, the supernatural stuff that's all around town, basically. Because, there's one thing, like, there's certain people, like, I haven't drunk any of Sybil's tea left, but I'm quickly approaching the fact where I will probably have to drink the tea in order to get to feeling better and all that. And, like, that's the thing. Whatever Sybil puts in her teas does help. So it's not like it makes you worse or it doesn't do anything. So Sybil obviously has some sort of healing power or uses natural ingredients that are known for healing power and all that. But, like, what I find just super fascinating is, like, she also uses her tea to keep Kanika close. And she basically makes her daughter get a cold or get the symptoms of a cold after drinking her tea. And I'm like, so you're doing that because there's a scene where after you get done with the tea reading and talk to Sybil and all that, you can go try and get Kanika and you can spend time in your room, you can flirt with her, and you can get her to try to come with you, but Sybil stops her. Like, she manipulates her, and there's something in that tea that affects the mind and makes it and makes whoever drinks it listen to Sybil. And so it's kind of funny, but it's also really kind of scary. Because, like I said, this little old lady who seems like she wasn't hurt to fly basically grounds her daughter, her grown daughter, to her room and is like, no, you're not investigating any of this. But she also doesn't stop you as a player from going to investigate. So what's up with that? And like I said, that's what makes me think she doesn't want her daughter to, but, like, why does she want the seals discovered? Why does she want the seals open? Does she want to see? I'm assuming she does, just because otherwise, why would you need to know they were there? And, like, I don't know. Like, I can't wait to continue playing through. Because, like I said, I'm about ready to go to. And the other funny thing is that, like, you can show up to Oscars and have a conversation with him, and then you find out that Dr. Kelly is there taking care of Rosalina. She sees you, not only immediately accepts what you say happens, or what Oscar said happened, not only does she immediately accept that, but she also is like, come to my office, I'll give you a physical. We'll figure this out. We'll see if there's anything that can be done. And, it's like, number one, that kind of sets off a ping of she knows about supernatural stuff, which I'm assuming means she doesn't drink the tea. And especially when we find out about Sybil and Dr. Kelly later on, I'm assuming that's because she doesn't trust Sybil within an inch of her life anymore. And so, but yeah. So I'm really excited to see what happens with the rest of episode 4. But, like, to wind back to my point, is that Zane is a teenager. He's part of the group of teens that we encounter in the mines in episode 2. He's very, like, he wants to ghost bust Oscar's house, like, immediately. Like, he's just like, whereas the rest of the teens are like, I don't want to hang out with the adults. He's like, yes, please, let me ghost bust with you and all that. Well, the thing that I find really interesting is that if you go to the pastor's place to either talk to him about having talked to animals, or if you have just mystical, you can talk to him about the creepy piano that starts playing every time he comes, every time he appears. And you can talk about his curse and everything. But, I also find really interesting because when the pastor first shows up after you arrive, he's like, oh, and 4 visitors four visitors in one day. And Kanika's like, 4? What? Oh, who's the other, And then Zane pops up. And he's just like, yeah, we wanted to come talk to the pastor. Stir about, the experience yesterday and everything. And then he darts off. So I have a theory? A hypothesis? I don't know. I'm not sure where it falls yet. But, my thought is that he doesn't drink Sybil's tea either. Because he seems not only extremely open to exploring the paranormal and ghost busting and all that, but he also is more, like, he's just definitely more vibrant, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of the people you meet in town, yeah, they have their own personalities and stuff, but it's like, you can kind of tell if they drink tea or not, even though you never see them drinking tea. But, like, the cops being a good example, the police being, like, unable to find a dead body in the woods, or unable to see the ditchlings for what they are. And, like, I find it really interesting that Sybil tells you right away what they are, or what she thinks they are. Now, They may not necessarily be that way, but I'm also assuming that they're probably not like evil, considering when we have talked to animals and we overhear what some of the animals say after being infected, that they are more, like, at least manipulated to believe, oh, this is right, this is good, this is part of life, blah, 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 blah. So, my guess is we will probably get to talk to Zane more in the future. And by talk to Zane, I mean, like, sit down with him and ask him questions. Because I have a feeling Zane's gonna be, like, he may not be super important, but as one of the few people in town who has never drunk Sybil's tea, as far as I'm aware, and the only one who seems to be active and clear-headed, so to speak. Like, I just find it weird that Sybil can generate illness out of someone drinking her tea. And I'm like, that's roofing people, Sybil. That's pretty much not good. And so, and like I said, I fully believe she's not fully evil. Like, I don't think she's doing this for an evil purpose. I think she's doing it, I think she's playing like a long con or a long game, and she's like, I'm almost, like, for some reason, I think she's tied in with the Scarlet, which is, I think, why she encourages Tabitha to be the one to make the sacrifice. Because I think she wants the Scarlets gone. Like, either because of her own plan, like, and I don't know what that plan is. And maybe it's like a regenerative thing. Maybe she can finally die and have some peace because Tabitha at Scarlet is holding people back. And, like, I don't know. But then there's us to deal with. And so I'm not really sure. But yeah, like I said, I honestly think Sybil is trying to do what she does, whatever her plan is, for the good of everyone. She's one of those people who's like, we need to get rid of this bad influence. We need to start over, make it fresh, try and live without, Which honestly brings up an interesting point. Now that we as a player exist, did Sybil, was that a wrench in Sybil's plans? Us showing up? And is that why she tries to manipulate us? Like, I don't know. But yeah, so my basic thought is that Zane has not drunk the tea. He is, A lot more. And he's probably seen a lot of stuff. And so my theory is that we are going to be able to talk to him at some point in the game and get some information out of him. I think. Like I said, could be wrong. He could be just background character. But like I said, he's shown up enough and kind of popped up in all kinds of different places to where I think, oh, he's more important than, probably a lot of people think he is. So anyway, that's my thought process. I'm going to try and finish the game sometime this week, probably, if I keep going the way I am. Because like I said, I'm in episode 4 already. But yeah, I just wanted to share some of that stuff with you guys. I wanted to talk to you about what I think is going on. I know we've talked about this before. If you have any ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments. If you want, if not, that's fine. Yeah. Other than that, expect I might go out for a little while today. Looks like it's fairly nice outside, maybe a little cold, but I might go out and see if I can walk for a little bit. Other than that, but yeah, I do plan on recording and uploading another part of Chef RPG. Like I said, either today or tomorrow. I'm not entirely sure, but wherever that works out, you guys will get something within either today or tomorrow, or possibly Friday, I don't know. But yeah, so I don't know, I felt the urge to replay the game recently, and it's like I want to talk about some in. So I'm sharing with you guys, and I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, I'll get this uploaded sometime today, and yeah, expect it sometime this afternoon, hopefully, or evening. In the meantime, I hope you guys are having a great week, and I will talk to you later.